what do you feel is some of the biggest missteps that coaches make that are stopping them getting the results they could probably get? Like, why is it that not everyone can get results like you?
It's funny because when I hear you talk about, and it's not the first time people talk about the basics. A basics base? I don't know why I don't like that word. I think it's not basics. It's just what matters, and we just solely concentrate on what matters.
Do you think it's the application of the basics is maybe a better term than the basics themselves? Because I think we're in a weird place in the industry now where we both, as a whole, oversimplify and overcomplicate everything. So people that just think, oh, it's just calories in versus calories out. That's all that matters. Well, there's going to be a sticking point here where something goes wrong and you have no idea how to deal with it. So, Lucas, it's been exciting to get you on the show. I know we've been chatting shop for the last 5-10 minutes before coming off air, but I had this idea a little bit of this show is going to be not missing the forest through the trees. You are probably one of the most results-producing coaches I've ever met, and as I said just before I click record, the person who more than anyone else in my career made me realize how much I needed to learn when I did a job interview with you. So, before we kind of get into sort of your processes, I saw a quote that you brought up on your Instagram a little bit ago that was saying is criticism is what was, coaching is what could be, which I absolutely loved. So delve into why that quote resonates with you and how you apply that with how you work with people.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on. I remember you messaged me saying, how many episodes have you done?
129.
Crazy. I think I read somewhere the other day, if you do over 10, you're the 1% of podcasts that exist, which is
So I'm coming for you, Rogan.
Yeah, so you're congrats on the consistency.
Thank you.
Which clearly speaks to lots of your success. Why do I like that quote? Do you know what? I guess for me, it's because you can't do anything about what was. It's like, what are you gonna do? And it summed it up quite well of how much do we just dwell on what went wrong? It's like, okay, you can learn from, let's talk specifically about client stuff. You can learn from what they haven't done last week or mistakes they've made, sure. But what are you going to do next? So there's the criticism of just berating people for doing it wrong, or just coaching them of okay, well, now what? And that's the bit that for me is, where the coach comes in. So yeah, can't remember where I read it or saw it, but liked it. And I thought absolutely coaching needs to be, I'm somewhat of a delusional optimist when it comes to client results and clients. And I've made the mistake before where you almost decide the client's results before the client results happen. And it's a huge mistake. And the worst that could ever happen, which has happened a couple of times, over the years, is where you've had a client and you've sort of decided that, yeah, a bit of weight loss, sure, a bit of exercise, sure. And then it's sort of petered out and they've gone to train with somebody else. And then you've seen they've got a six pack and you go, oh, for fuck's sake, what was I doing? So, I just think remaining completely optimistic and yeah, the coaching of what could be is personal training for me.
So obviously in those few examples, and I'm sure every coach listening has had those times where someone has left them and got a better result elsewhere. From the times it's happened to you, looking back, what do you think you could have changed in terms of the things that you could have done to got them over that line, over that sort of mid-diet limbo?
Look, there's times where things just don't match up and c'est la vie, fine. You're not the right coach for somebody, and your methods aren't the right structure for somebody. And personal training is a product and a service. So that's blurred lines there. I think that you need to provide a service where you accommodate for the client, absolutely, in your product. And then it needs to be a off-the-shelf thing that they buy. So there's a bit of a tussle there between the relationship between the trainer and the client. But essentially, if somebody's left you and gone and got a better result elsewhere, well, then you didn't figure that client out. And your job as a trainer is to find out what makes them tick, what works for them, and what motivates them. So whatever, in whatever capacity and whatever percentage of those you're looking at, you didn't do it well enough. So figure it out.
There's a line here, because I know but both me and you are very kind of data driven people. Mm-hmm. And where is this line? Because you mentioned obviously being a service between data and sort of that personal touch of it. Because on one side, as you said, your job is to figure somebody out and find that solution that helps them stick to a plan. But sometimes you'll have clients that will, through every justification in the world of, well, I feel better, or oh, I'm less tired, or my energy's good. And well, we all want those things. Ultimately, the goal is feel better. But I can't measure or track feel. And sometimes getting people through that hurdle comes to looking at, okay, what are the facts here? What can you do? What's the next step? For you, like, I know that's maybe a very, it depends kind of answer, but where is sort of that line between empathy and assertiveness that needs to happen to get a great result with a client?
It just comes down to the goal. So I'm always circling back to like the goal, almost to a point where clients must think like, we've been through this. And I'm like, I know, but I'm just making sure that we're both on the same page. But I think once you've established that, then great. If there's a body composition goal stuff, like the transformation stuff, the fat loss, the muscle gain, whatever that is, then fine. But you will have clients that isn't a top priority. It's like, just move a bit. And then that's also fine. I just think I'm very matter of fact in the goal. So, and that's, the data is part of that. And then obviously the feelings thing, I try and explain to them, if we're doing body comp and we're doing, let's talk transformation stuff, then like data takes everything. And I'm always say to them, like, we try and remove the head here. I'm just going to look at you as like a bunch of tissue. And it's like, obviously they're not a bunch of tissue. They're a human and they've got needs and feelings and like things, and they come into it, but data will dictate whether it's working or not. And I always position that as a criticism of myself, not of them. So if their statistics aren't changing, then it's down to me and I need to change these things. So yeah, there's a bit of a blurred line there, I guess. But the goal is everything. What's the goal? And then let's make that goal happen. That's it.
I always use the term like assertive empathy, because I find that if you look at a spectrum from the world's most accommodating rent-a-friend to the drill sergeant, neither of these people are going to gel with a lot of people. You get the odd people that love either one, but I generally feel that if I had to choose the ultimate coach and they have to lean slightly towards drill sergeant or slightly more towards rent-a-friend, I may slightly go down the drill sergeant route. Not so much so that it becomes overbearing, but just because they set expectations for the goal, this is what needs to be done, the outline structure, they eliminate decision fatigue. And I find that sometimes people are so worried about upsetting somebody, and I always come back to the line, nothing will make a client dislike you more than feeling like you've wasted their time and money. And I think the big thing that I think you touched on there is setting expectations, and how important is that? Like, I'm always saying to my clients, look, rather than saying you didn't do this, like the criticism is what was, it's more, hey, so we agreed upon X, Y, and Z. Based off the data, we are struggling to hit this. What can we do to bring up this? Or do we need to refine the goal? It's never a good or bad, but most clients are going to come like, I don't want to refine the goal.
Yeah, explain. I think that's like, the prediction, the trajectory they're on. If you keep on doing this, this is what's going to happen. But if you want this to happen, then you're going to have to change this. But that's data driven stuff. Like that's everything. I'm really like all of my things, I'm tracking everything. It's all very number driven and it's all very matter of fact. And then once that's there, then I'm your best friend. And because you need both, and you need to, and I've disagreed with lots of people on this, and I have done over the years, but like they need to enjoy seeing you, like, and you genuinely have the opportunity to be the best part of their day. And as PTs, we get that because we love training, well, most of the time. And that's normally the best part of our day. And you have to like have the mindset, this needs to be something that they enjoy. And I know some people, and it's maybe some some personal stuff where it's like I want to hurt them and like make them sick. Okay, but yeah. So as long as you're doing your job well, then the other thing. But I think there's definitely from trainers that I've mentored over the years. People are definitely scared because if you run your own business and you've got these clients, it's a bit like putting your prices up. They're like, I don't want to do that. They'll leave me. And if I'm, not kissing their ass, they're going to leave me. And if I make them do things they don't want to do, they're going to leave me. So with good reason, it's not unreasonable to say that you want to make it as nice as possible. But, to your point, the result is everything. So it's got to come first and then, and then the rest.
Yeah.
I don't know where that line is, but, and then and then you go into like personality types and what the person wants. And now welcome to personal training. It's personal and everybody's different and you need to find the balance there. But the balance there always needs to equate the goal. So whatever percentage that looks like, it will change slightly from person to person. I've dealt with some people that, they've never been told off before or whatever. So you almost need to go further down that line with those people. And some people that beat themselves up all the time and you think, actually, they need a bit of an arm around them here more than that. And welcome to the game. Like that's it. Figuring that out, that's going to enable the best result.
It's almost a forgotten thing, right? Like a lot of the stuff that I work with the coaches when I mentor people is like, well, I love nerding out on all the science of terms of nutrition and training and mechanics and all the things, the wormholes and rabbit holes you can go down, and they can make a difference in certain people's lives depending on certain things. But I see so many coaches spend hours trying to find the best macro split. I'm like, just get them doing something and then coach them. And same thing with training. I went to see Tom Hibbert and did a 5-hour mentorship talking about hypertrophy and his thing, strength. And I was like, well, run me through what you do with a hypertrophy goal. And he was like, well, pick the thing that they like the most that will train hardest. I'm like, and while there's so many nuances in that, you can create the most optimal plan in the world, but if someone hates it enough, they're never even going to go anywhere close to failure. How, are we actually missing the forest through the trees with this?
That's interesting. Okay. So what do you do?
In terms of my training for clients?
Clients, yeah. Like, what's your approach of that?
So generally on the whole, when I work with somebody, I will always write both meal plans and training for the optimal. What is going to be the most efficient way to get someone to their goal first? So I'll look at them, look at how they move in that first session and build a little bit of...
You do meal plans, right?
Yes.
What's your thing with this meal plans? I saw you post something earlier ranting about meal plans.
My thing with the meal plan, again, it's not like you must eat, 120 grams of this, but I feel there are too many coaches that literally just give macros with no guidance, working with beginners that have no idea. I like comparing it to like, imagine somebody trying to learn Chinese and just go to China, you'll work it out, as opposed to giving them a Rosetta Stone tape. And I think giving some structure of like, well, here's the nutrient-dense food sources that you can potentially get it. Here's how to actually build some meals. Here's a little bit of structure we can play with and we can fine-tune and tweak. Get good at this. And then rather than having MyFitnessPal with every food in the world and assume someone isn't going to make mistakes. And I see a lot of, maybe you don't see this as much. I don't know. I don't know your client base. But like, I see a lot of people when they give them macros, there's all sorts of things they miss out. And you end up with this data and this wonderful looking tracker of this committed client who's apparently eating 1,500 calories and not losing weight. And we know there's stuff that they're either consciously or subconsciously not putting in there. So how do we create structure and solve those issues?
But that's coaching, isn't it? So I'm one of those PTs that you think are lazy. I go the other way. Oh, no, I don't. So we do the same thing, but differently. So
yeah,
for me, I think I'm really deep on educating the client. And part of their education process is them figuring it out. And we have this like period in the beginning, which is them exploring and having fun. And I'm coaching them along the way. And that to me is the most impactful part of their transformation. And it also tells me everything I need to know about them.
Yeah.
If they're not up for doing that bit, then it's just never going to work. Now I give them loads of literature and stuff, and loads of support. But for me, that's coaching is not giving it to them on a plate. Excuse the pun. But I am very much like, here's how this all works. This is what's important, and what we're going to do over the next couple of weeks, and it might take longer than that, is figure your diet out. Because once we figure your diet out, how you're going to do it, then that has a lot more legs to it than you just following what I'd eat, because we probably eat so many different things, and maybe you live in a different country or whatever. So yeah, it's funny that because there's so many different ways to get there. But yeah, I was interested to hear, because we do things almost at different ends of the scale there, because I am actually like, hey, you need to eat this many calories and this much protein. Good luck, But I almost use that as and I've got a few things that I've noticed I do over the times of like, almost like tests, like let's see what this person's all about. And then it's, but that's then more work down the line. You think, oh, it's less work in the beginning because you're not writing meal plans. Guess what? It's a lot more work because you're going backwards and forwards, and they're going, fucking hell, nuts have got crazy calories. And you're like, fantastic, well done. Like, that's why I didn't put it in your meal plan, So it's like, yeah, I'm very deep on the coaching process. Now, what you can't do, and this is something that we can talk about down the line, is do that at great scale. But I have no interest in doing things at great scale, because I feel like we're not trying to build this stupid empire that everyone keeps talking about. It's like, just be a really good personal trainer to as many people as you can be, which is probably not that many. And then the biggest part of that is the coaching period. So go back and forth, and it takes a lot of work, but you'll have a client that then really truly understands things, and also has built a diet that they can stick to and find convenient and works for their lifestyle, because you've built it together. I would say to them, we're going to build your diet together. I'll give you everything you need though. And this is a really good part, especially with people that are, whatever you want to call them, high-end clients. I'm like, but let's, you've got to take responsibility for your own diet here. So, let's not be a child. You're an adult. And obviously they're a bit like, Jesus, of course I'm an adult. Yeah, I'm not going to embarrass myself here. And lots of, you would think, super, paying through the nose for things, that it's all here. Here's everything, sir. And it's actually like, well, hang on, are you like a functioning adult? Like, can you not work out what to eat? And then I also say to clients, listen, gun to your head, I think you'd work it out. It's not fucking pizzas and burgers, is it? Like, I think the good foods to eat. I'm just going to teach you how to track them. And then obviously the tracking miscalculations is an absolute nightmare. Again, welcome to the game. This is coaching. So you have to go back and forth, and you're going to repeat yourself a million times. It's a bit like, we used to go through the hip extension. Not hip extension. Or was it the hip extension? Maybe just hip extension in general, and it was like the best way to coach it, and it's so hard to do, and neutral spine, and you've got to come here, and what the tools you're going to use, and where you're going to touch, and it was like always trying to find out the best way to coach it. And until one day I just said, listen, we're going to coach this forever, and it's never going to, like, just get on board with the fact that you're always trying to find the silver bullet here. You're going to be coaching hip extension to everyone forever, and it's going to take an annoying amount of time to get some clients to do it. And I think the same with diets. It's like part of the job, isn't it? Same way you're going to teach someone to do a bicep curl. And yeah, the job can be repetitive in those moments, but so's, I don't know, printing shit in an office. I don't know what other job does, but like, there's whatever other jobs are out there. I literally don't live in the real world. So yeah, it's interesting to hear, but I'm slightly more on the go figure it out.
I think you've explained though why you're not one of my analogies though, because you're not a macros coach and here's your protein and calories goal and see you later. You are like you're maybe not the Rosetta Stone tape, but you're on the plane with them to China, showing them the sights to see, and over the weeks they'll learn how to do it. And when I look at sort of like the meal plan I approach, it's not actually too dissimilar. I will give a base structure, and I'll get on a call going, okay, what are the foods you kind of eat? Let's build this together on initial call. Give this a go, track these foods. Because then I've like, there are 10 foods to fuck up rather than 100 foods to fuck up. And then over time, you're like, well, do you want to change some things out? Play around with this. And then I do this sort of back and forth. Like, but for coaches who maybe aren't good at this coaching thing in between, whether you start with the meal plan or start with the numbers and go from there, and having that back and forth, like, this may sound like an obvious question, but I'm guarantee this will help somebody. Is this sort of like food pictures going back and forth, like taking photos of your meals, looking at that, going, hey, look, that's a bit shiny. Is this how you're doing that process?
It's different for everyone, but generally we'll start with tracking stuff. So let me just scoot ahead real quick here. If it's working, it's working. If it's not working, you troubleshoot, and you kind of work backwards. So we can do, we can do it all. Essentially, we get them start tracking, and then my trackers on let's just talking transformation stuff or fat loss stuff. If they're losing weight at the right amount of at the right pace that we want, and we'll have some parameters for that. I don't really get that involved in their diet. I look at it, I see what they're eating, we talk about it. But in terms of their tracking, as long as it seems reasonable, then great. And reasonable would mean eating whole foods mostly. The calories seem like they're roughly what we would want them to be. They're not eating, Haribo and protein shakes just to hit some numbers. Then I kind of leave them alone. I'm constantly giving support and chatting to them about it and finding, oh, look, I found this sort of thing. Have you tried this kind of thing? But yeah, if it's working, it's working. So I don't really care. If it's not working, then all of those things where it's like, well, let's go back to this. And we constantly have to go back to that tracking thing. Normally, it's quite hard to get right. It's an inexact science. There's a lot of guesswork. And then there's the pictures. I guess that would be more of a, like when you're in school and you get put on report and it's like, right, log it and then take a picture and then send me it. And I want to see how you've logged it. And I want to see what I would have written for that. And if you're out at a friend's house or a restaurant it's none of my clients ever have just had 12 weeks of doing nothing. So it's a constant conversation. It's never, again, if it's working, it's working. If it's not working, they need to fix it. And even with the tracking stuff, to be honest, when we look at, the metrics that we track along a transformation, if it's working, you haven't got to track as much. It's just like I always explain, but if it ever goes wrong, I'll have no information to help you with. So, you kind of find out where you want to go with that. But yeah, for me, and this goes back to what we were speaking about earlier, is do your job and get the result and whatever that takes. And then whatever that takes means a blurred line between that service and product of you have a certain way of working. This is what you've bought. And then a service, which is serve the client and be flexible and resourceful in your approach.
I think that's sort of you saying there about whatever it takes in terms of getting the result. And if it's working, it's working. It's quite an important point that I think a lot of coaches sort of we think in optimal. We think, okay, as you said, seeing the client's result almost sometimes before they've seen it, and you're like, this is what I could see you could do. This is the potential. And we almost risk being overbearing with that client and it's working, and I'm now picking holes in the stuff that they're not doing. And I remember having a conversation with, former colleague of both of ours, a guy called Reed Stafford, really, really good coach. And he was just like, within reason, he's not doing anything stupid that's going to harm his clients. And if they're really unhealthy, we'll have the conversation. But it's if you're progressing at the rate that we have set, then it's your target to get there. I'm not going to knock it because all I'm going to do is make it harder. If it becomes a problem, we can have that conversation. And I think sometimes it's we think about, well, this is how much cardio they should do for the aerobic benefits, or this is the optimal fat ratio. Well, those things, certainly have their place. There's an element of are you just making this much harder? If I can get in shape without any cardio, eating a chocolate bar a day, is it the optimal? No. But are they going to enjoy it and stick to it? It's the practical way of doing it. Yeah.
And I think you have to also remember that this is forever. I think one thing I've been big on lately, and I've been always on it, but now more and more and more, and I just really kind of push that narrative with my clients is you need to find a method to get you from A to B. But at B, the relationship isn't over. And as a coach, you better take some responsibility for that, because that's when you fuck people up, is that let's just get here, shall we? And then once we're here, we've got loads to do. And guess what? You've got 40 years to do it. And that's how long our relationship should last. You really should be with a trainer. until you're in a really great place. And what's a really great place? I don't know, some sort of like control over body composition, understanding how it all works, having a good relationship with food, whatever the fuck that means, and doing some exercise that is adding to your health, not taking away from it. And then also doing some exercise that you probably enjoy that is maybe a little bit more risky if you wish. So yeah, that's a long journey. But in terms of fat loss, it's kind of A to B, whilst using methods that are, I would say, we're going to get you there in the healthiest, fastest way possible. And it has to be in that order. And then we will, it's almost, this whole like, you got to do a diet you can, what's it, the best diet you can stick to or whatever it is. And you think, well, not forever though, because you can't diet forever because you will vanish and then you will die. It's not forever, is it? It's not, it's like, it's for me, it's, you need to find a diet that you can stick to for the time period that you've allocated to get you to a point, which is not such a sexy saying, but it's, find a method that works for you, which is not stupid. And then something that at least gives you the foundation to then build upon and then build, habits and those things will stick with you, and food choices. And I'm still eating real foods and stuff. And that whole like 80-20 split I quite like. And yeah, so it's, I guess there's A to B, and then it's like B to Z, which is years and years and years of coming out the other side of it. But yeah, absolutely find a way to get there.
Yeah, I think that best diet is the one you can stick to. Is like, I always agree with that statement, but I have a love-hate relationship with the sustainability trend. Like the goal in my mind, long term, is to have something that someone sustains. As you said, that we're going to be doing this forever. But if I told someone on day one, what's the diet you sustain? It's 3 pissets of the mate, pizza Thursdays, burger Tuesdays. I'm like, well, yes, you are sustaining that diet, and how is that working? Yeah. So I almost think sustainability is an element of like, right, we've got this A to B goal. Let's get you to this goal. And some ways there's going to be like, we'll try and find it as the most minimally restrictive, bearable way of getting you to this goal, but there has to be some restriction. And then when you kind of get to the end, the B, now it's like, well, what do you want back? Like if you still miss it after 8 to 12 weeks of like being slightly more restrictive with it, then it's important to you. And let's find a way and then we build sustainability. Whereas I think a lot of people use sustainability on day one as almost this like, I want to be 1 foot in, 1 foot out in case I fail. So they go, well, I just want it to be sustainable. So I don't want to cut out alcohol and biscuits and all that other stuff.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think there's a, it's really interesting. Yeah, I think because so there's an argument, and I've argued both ways with myself because I only work for myself. So my business meetings are just me. Just talking about myself.
Fake mustache, changed it around the side of the desk.
Exactly. One of those Instagram videos where you just do like both the characters. It is the initial start to a diet is like, do you ease them in or do you just, and I've been asked this question a lot. It's like, which one do you do? And where I can understand, and you could look at my approach currently and say, well, you're easing them in. Don't feel like I am, but it's, let's get this thing done as quickly as possible. Like, we're dragging it out. Like, we'll go with palm sizes, and then maybe after 4 weeks, we'll bring in calorie counting. We're just going to start off a water goal. And it's a bit like, yeah, they've paid 10 grand. So should we just get them the result like now? Because like, this is as much as you might drag out the process, and maybe you're going to install some habits, which I guess is just completely made up. I feel like I understand that, but I also know that my clients want the results quickly, as do I, because also, sometimes you've got to strike while the iron's hot. And it's like, I'm super motivated right now. They go, well, if you're motivated right now, then here it is. This is what we're going to do. And we've got, however, 8, 12, 16 weeks, whatever you're going to do to really get nailed on. But yeah, you've got that whole buy-in thing, which I don't really love, but I can understand.
I almost think there's a little bit of an overcorrection in the industry now as well, right? With the backlash of the very, very quick transformation, where there were a few casualties, mainly because of the poor reverse dieting and not taking responsibility. That there's a lot of this thing of like healthy diets and healthy fat loss means you've got to take 6 years to do it. And I'm like, well, not necessarily. I think there is a way of being efficient. And one of the things of a buy-in is like, if you get someone to lose a little bit of weight and they go, oh my God, Lucas is the man. Then when it comes to the reverse diet conversation, you're having the conversation, you might get a bit softer, we're going to build calories up. They're going to trust you Whereas if they've taken 7 years to get £5 off, it's like, well, do you have that same level of confidence? And I think while yes, horrendously low calorie, low carb dieting for 6 years straight isn't good, I don't think necessarily just adding an official for 4 weeks and seeing how it works is necessarily equals better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, agreed. Nothing to add to that. Agreed.
So, like, going into a little bit of like not so much your approach, but just sort of like, we've talked about a lot of things about things that you do that help you get some of the results that you have and how you communicate with your clients. And I followed you for a while. I worked alongside you rather than with you because we were at different gyms and seen how you work and the results you get. Mm-hmm. You are a person that spent a lot of money on your education through Polo Kun courses, to Michael, to RTS, to all these sort of things. You know the intricacies, you know the weeds. But you see a man that's very ruthlessly consistent on the basics, like protein and calorie goal, right? It's the stuff that matters and nothing else. So what do you feel is some of the biggest missteps that coaches make that are stopping them getting the results they could probably get? Like, why is it that not everyone can get results like you?
Well, as the most self-deprecating person I know, that's an impossible question to answer. But I guess, with the it's funny because when I hear you talk about, and it's not the first time people talk about the basics. A basics base? I don't know why I don't like that word. I think it's not basics. It's just what matters, and we just solely concentrate on what matters. And maybe that is the base. I don't know what the definition of basics is, to be honest. But like it's almost. I think you need to go like full expert to then go, right, we've now explored everything. These are the things that we've come up with. So it's not necessarily just sticking to like, level 1. It's like you need to go to level 100 to then go, right, okay, we've tried fucking everything here. These are the things that we found mattered the most. And I think that comes with, experience. Although I don't really love experience because I know that some trainers that are experience means a long time. I know trainers that haven't done any education in 20 years, so they're experienced, they're still shit. But I guess that comes with exploration, maybe is a better word, and trial and error, and educating yourself and trying things out, seeing what works, seeing what doesn't work. And then for me, it's all about refining. I always talk about, I'm constantly trying to refine what I do, and even like the methods I use. I want to like just get it to like the perfect hammer and nail. Like, can I hit it once every time and it just works every time? And that's will be an ongoing journey. And you work in sciences where things evolve and change, and you're kind of like science led. So I think it's just been a journey of that, really. And now, say calories and protein is super basic. Yeah, because you're trying to make it as easy for the client as possible. And I always look back at some diets that I used to put people on, or do myself. Like, the first diet I ever did, I had boiled chicken and broccoli for 10 weeks without anything else, because I thought that's what you had to do. So, now it's like, if I ever speak to a client that I've not spoken to in years or whatever, you just go, oh my God, I'm so sorry. But the way we do things now, you're going to absolutely love. And that's it's funny because when I do consultations, which nowadays isn't that often, but I get so excited about telling, like, I'm so like enthusiastic because I think you think this is going to be way harder than it is, and it's never been easier. And then also, the foods we have available in whatever shop it is, or whatever supplement it is, or wherever, it's never been easier. It's never been better. If you're vegetarian, if you're vegan, whatever, it's never been easier, and it's only going to get easier because we're sort of supermarkets are cottoning on to this, like, oh, it seems like these people want high protein, low calorie meals, and it's like, yes, we do. Please give them to us. So it's never been easier for them, and that gets me really excited. And I think that's only come from going around the houses at first to getting to a point where you do the basics, I guess. Let's call it what matters.
Do you think it's the application of the basics is maybe a better term than the basics themselves? Because I think we're in a weird place in the industry now where we both, as a whole, oversimplify and overcomplicate everything. So people that just think, oh, it's just calories in versus calories out. That's all that matters. Well, there's going to be a sticking point here where something goes wrong. You have no idea how to deal with it, or people are just trying to, as you said, to have Haribo and Pop-Tarts to hit the numbers. Whereas, yes, you are saying a protein and calorie goal, but how you coach is all the intricacies around that you've learned from going around and doing this and being able to see examples and doing the chicken broccoli and knowing what's bad about it, but also knowing what's good about it. And from experience going, look, this may look like a good meal, but you're going to be starving in 6 weeks. Let me tell you, sorry. And it's that coaching of those basics that's changed because of all the education experience like that you've done.
Absolutely, yeah. There was a, I think it was like Sir Clive Woodward talked about the when they won the Rugby World Cup. It was like we did world-class basics, and I thought, yeah, I prefer that term because it's just doing the right things. And you know what? One thing I think, if I ever have to speak like this, like would separate me from the majority of trainers that I meet and see, is that I will outbore you. I will turn up more and for longer and do the same shit and not get bored of it because it works. And I think people get a bit distracted and it's like, oh, what's this over here? Oh, what's this over here? And I'm like, go crazy. I am going down this lane, doing it like this, and I'll do it forever and ever and ever and not get bored. And so I'm always like, I think the consistency of, I would just think I'll outbore you because you won't be able to put up with this because you'll get bored more before I will, because I just know that this works. And my only interest and my only goal is to get results. And I will just continuously do that forever and ever and ever. So yeah, I think not getting distracted by like the latest trends or whatever, or, you know, not say I'm not open-minded to them, but I'm definitely not distracted and then like, yeah, forget what I'm actually up to by them. And I think that's probably one thing that I see other coaches are, you know, I mentor a few guys just, you know, ad hocly. And we'll sit down and go through some stuff and I send them away and I think, oh, okay, that was productive. That was quite cool. And then you'll see them in a couple of months. They're like, yeah, I did that and it was going really well. But then this came in and you think, well, and now what? You're doing that and it's not working? Like, what happened? Like, I think people struggle to be like the metronome of just like continuously delivering this one product, which by the way works and like gets you a lot further ahead than trying to sort of scoot around. And I guess that goes back to like knowing what your product is and delivering on your product rather than trying to, yeah, constantly do a million different things.
Yeah, 100%. And I think also you're almost subconsciously setting an example for your clients because it's exactly the same thing with regards to diet. If you turn up, you know, you got your routine, you stick to your routine, you get your steps done, you tick your boxes, you come to the gym. Whereas if they see their trainer dropping between different training approaches and different nutritional approaches, like it's like them trying to find the new diet that's the silver bullet.
100%. And you see that a lot of clients, and especially with clients that, you know, that I really like to train, the clients that are interested in it all. And, you know, I've got a couple of clients even at the minute that you'll turn up and they'll go, I've seen this today on Instagram or this on YouTube. Like, what do you think of this? And you have to just be like, no, this is why, and this is why we're doing this. And this is what we've been doing for the last 6 weeks. We're trying to get from here to here. And like, it's not just this like sporadic exercise stuff. You're really trying to take them from A to B along a journey. And there's a reason for everything. So yeah, absolutely. You get it with clients that I guess, you know, I don't know what it is, but I don't get bored of it. And I don't get bored of feeling like we're going along a journey. And maybe other people do, but I just never struggled with that.
Was there like, because you've always said like this, and you've kind of reinforced this here. Like you know your product, you know what works. You're very confident in what works. Like, have you like? Because I bet a lot of people jump between because they don't back themselves, and maybe they struggle with imposter syndrome, and they feel they're missing something. Yep. Like, is this something you have ever struggled with? And if it has, when did the light bulb go off for you? Where you're like, no, I believe I actually back this, and I can take action on it.
Yeah, absolutely. People second guess themselves, and that's probably why they change things. I don't know. I guess I got to a point where going through that kind of refining stage, because I've had some results before that when I look back, you think, well, that was lucky. Like it worked despite all those things that I was doing that I would never do now. But I guess just going through that refining stage, getting to a point where you go, okay, so it's taken all this time, but finally I know that if somebody comes in here, we do this and this happens. I guess that just took time. I don't know if there was a day that, I woke up and it's suddenly like, here we are. And as I say, I would never be arrogant enough to think I've sussed it. But in terms of transformation stuff, I could probably transform anyone, and I would back myself. And at the level of clientele that I'm currently doing, like you fucking better be good. Like it's like it's gun to your head stuff. So you have to be in that position. But I wouldn't do that. Hopefully I wouldn't do that without reason. It's just taking time. We've just going back in the day. It was like calories don't matter, and it was just it was. God knows what we were talking about, but
growth hormone on your knee, mate. That's what we were doing.
Knee and walking past a donut shop and spiking insulin, and that causing fat gain, and it was madness. But but do you know what's funny though? And this is like a bit of a tangent, but where I've worked in over the last few years, worked in this busy commercial gym setting. And then also that being paired with what we've just spoken about, you actually find out what works through what doesn't work. And what I mean by that is there's people in the gym that if you looked at, let's say in a busy commercial gym, they're walking in, they're in shape. There's no way you can deny that they don't have muscles and they're not lean. And you think, well, every part of their workout, I hate. I hate the workout structure. I hate the way they do their reps. I hate everything that they're stopping and doing. And you think this doesn't make sense. Like how you split, you're just doing arms for 3 hours. And you sort of do all these things that you think that is categorically not what I would recommend, but they're in shape. So then you have to say, what are they doing right? And you go back and you think, well, I tell you what they're doing right is they turn up every day and they are really consistent and they train really hard. And you do that and you're pretty much there. You just need to add a little bit of science to maybe if you structured it this way, you might be better and you'd also not put your body at risk and your joints might be a bit happier in a few more years. And the same way as when you look at, what we did wrong back in the day, you go, well, how did you get results then? You think, well, I was really on my clients. I measured them all the time. I was very enthusiastic and I installed a belief in them that what we were doing was going to work. And then it worked. So there's as many, I always look back and think, fucking hell, you got lucky there a few times because you're talking rubbish. But you can also look at it and think, okay, so then how did you get results? And there's always a lesson to learn from every result you get of well, something went right clearly. And if you can pick the bits that you did right and then, move those along with the things you've learned of the methodologies, then you're going to only benefit from that.
You spoke there about working in a commercial and working in a busy gym, and obviously your seminar was about getting results in these busy environments. Mm-hmm. And then the pandemic happened, and then more and more people went online than ever before. Like you've done a bit of online, and you were saying this before we were on air. You do a lot of one-to-one. Do you think the products are different? Do your systems that you were talking about differ at all when you're working with someone online or whether in person?
The way of working is exactly the same. This is going to sound so stupid. The only thing that's different is I train people. The only difference is that I'm there in their sessions. That is it. There's nothing. I mean, it's absolutely hilarious. Sorry, I was going to swear there, but I don't know what rating you've got of this podcast. But
I don't give a fuck if that helps.
Okay, good, yeah, great. It's fucking hilarious that you get these people on Instagram being like, online you can deliver so much more than you can in person. Online, the gym floor's dead and all this. And I just think, I don't know how you can say it with a straight face. It's hilarious because there's nothing that you can do online that you can't do in person. In person is far superior to online training. Not even close. Because you're putting them through the workout. In terms of dieting, it's pretty similar. We as I say, I go through that kind of coaching thing. We set them up, and then you coach them along a diet. I don't need to be there in person the majority of the time for that. Although obviously you have the luxury of checking in on them and chatting to them and looking in their face when they're telling you what they ate, and you see if they're lying or not.
Yeah.
You got a bit of that, but generally, yeah, the nutrition is exactly the same. In terms of my thought process behind programming are very similar, but online it's a guess, and it's an educated guess based on the feedback you get and where you think they are and where you think they want to be, and you just do your best like job with it. But obviously, in person, you're there seeing every set, every rep, and it's just a much more accurate and much better product than you can online. So yeah, they're very similar. Like the trackers are all the same. The literature's the same. Obviously, they get a bit more literature if it's online. Well, I give it to everybody anyway, but maybe they read it more, and in person we just sit down and go through it all. But yeah, as I say, as obvious as it sounds, the only real difference is I'm training the in-person people. Surprise, surprise.
I think the one of the big trade-offs is here, because you're in control, the ability to have what we call a true body transformation is much more achievable in person, because you can make sure those workouts are efficient and effective enough to achieve the muscle building stimulus rather than just dieting somebody. But like, I think where a lot of people going online get that little bit of a shock is that they're comparing themselves to the people who have maybe who've built up a reputation, work with trainers, more advanced people, the Andy Morgans of the world, the Callum Raystricks of the world, and people are getting these guys who know how to train, and then they put in their bio, I work with busy people, busy mums trying to get in the best shape of their life whilst not giving up the foods they love. And when
busy,
I look
by the way, busy,
anyone that works,
but just anyone
not homeless.
No. Honestly, it drives me insane that I see people work with busy. I've never met anybody, and I know people that have never worked a day in their life that aren't busy. It's like, who are these people that are sat around not just going, I've just got so much spare time, I don't know what to do with it. Like,
shame I can't work with this coach.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, for God's sake, I'm not busy enough for him. It's comedy. But sorry, I interrupt you. Keep going.
No. Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. And they get a shock when all of a sudden that they're wondering why their clients are putting on any tissues, because you give them a program and they're not good at it. But I think, going back to your coaching thing, I think you were saying that coaching someone through nutrition, I think sometimes if people do send training videos, which are the hardest thing to send, get you to send a picture of them in their underpants weekly, easy. Get them to send you a video of them doing a split squat, impossible.
Yeah.
But I see people who maybe are like trackers, like 1,200 calories, not losing weight, and I'm going, I don't believe this. And then I watch their dumbbell curls and they're fucking swinging and everything out, and I go, your life's chaotic, your sleep's chaotic, your training is clearly chaotic, but according to you, your macro tracking is the one area of your life where you have structure. I'm like, okay, cool. I've got some questions to ask.
Yeah, that's hilarious. Yeah, but it's part of the job, isn't it? Coaching and then interpreting. You have to interpret and then try and communicate back in a certain way that is going to be helpful, I guess. And this is what I said at the beginning. It's part of the job. Don't like the job, do a different job. But you're going to be investigating people's like tracking, and just, I think there's a bit of an experience thing of like, interpreting what that looks like. And then, I can look at a tracker now and tell you immediately what's going on based, it might be things like their steps finish on 2 zeros every day. And you're like, well, that's guessed. I've never done that in my life, and I've tracked for a long time.
Fats, 75 grams across the week, all the way through.
Every day.
Yeah.
So, but again, experience, I guess. And then it's first recognizing that, having the confidence, I guess, to call it out, which I don't know how to. I guess confidence comes from competence. Like, once you know that you know what you're doing, maybe you just feel better about doing it. I don't know where that line really sits, and then it's about delivering some help.
I think it's going back to what you were saying earlier on about sort of like getting done what needs to be done rather than using the word basic. When you know what needs to be done, you have no problem calling out what needs to be done. And when you have the goal to refer back to, it's much easier to have that conversation. And certainly with data, it's much easier to say, hey, you're not losing weight. What the fuck? Or going, hey, look, here's the data. All of these have a 0. Let's face it. I'm maybe I'm judging you wrong, so feel free to call me out. But I reckon the person that you have, you are equally as sarcastic from me when you see obvious mistakes in a tracker to kind of like lighten the burden. So if I see the number of steps on a 0, I'll use the same line. It's, so you telling me you were on 9,999 steps and then you jumped into bed?
Yeah, exactly.
And that always gets me the answer that I'm looking for, right? Because they know how silly it is. Like looking at food diaries, you see 11.5 cashews or 1 ounces of steak. I'm like, who eats a 1 ounce steak?
Yeah. Or a cup of steak. You go, what cup did they serve it in? What was this cup that we're finding out? Yeah, it's again, but that's what I say. That's what I say about having the confidence to do that. And I'm generally the same with everyone. Which can be a huge mistake sometimes, but it is what it is. But yeah, you might take a slightly different tone, and some people, like I say, some people might need a slightly softer, like, hey, what's going on? Can we just like chat about this? And other people might be like a fucking LOL. Look at your steps. Like, what the hell? Like, I know you're guessing this. Like, whatever. So yeah, but again, that goes back to the coaching service side of it, which is, have your product, but deliver it in a way that is personal. Because guess what? This is personal training. And,
is this what do you reckon a lot of coaches who go straight into the online game now, because there's so many of them, that we can talk about the obvious in terms of you can't really understand training and training volume and food, like training videos without having physically been there and done it with clients. But do you think that's what you also miss, that ability to be able to read between the lines and like, when you were saying that some people need the slightly soft approach, some people need the LOL. I'm like, I don't consciously do that. I just work that out by the person I've got. And if I hadn't done 14, 15 years of doing that with people, I don't know whether I'd be good at that. And things can be misconstrued over WhatsApp or email. So like,
try to be as sarcastic as I am over text message. I mean, it's a nightmare because sometimes you're when something's written down, it reads a lot worse than if you said it. You think, I wish I was just in person with them. They would have known that was a joke. But people that have gone just straight online, it should be illegal. And I mean that 100% seriously. Like, I think it's way too easy to become a personal trainer anyway.
Yeah.
You're giving advice of what they should do with their joints and muscles and diet. It's crazy how easy it is to be insured to do that. And it's crazy how you can now just do it online. Like, you've never even seen the person and you're telling them how many reps they should do. Even that basic blows my mind. And I think part of like any success I've ever had with this as a job is being shit scared the whole time that I'm doing it completely wrong. And not to a crippling point of like not giving any advice, but the whole time being like, you better make sure this is good. And then that just makes you work really hard at it. And that leaks into things like online training. If you're going to give the best advice, think about it and give the best, start very cautiously and build up. And I'm really communicative on that. I'm explaining to them the whole time, like, this is online training. I'm an expert in one-to-one training. And I have an online product, but even with my one-to-one, it's a best guess. We work on feedback. You have feedback in the immediacy. How does that feel now? What does it look like? How does it feel in 10 seconds? And then it's like feedback the next day. How do you feel today? Any issues? And then, I guess the next day as well. And you just kind of have to do that with online also. But it's so easy currently with online, which is like, here's the program, like check in on Monday. It's kind of bizarre. I stopped to do, well, I say I stopped. I didn't start to do online training for years because I couldn't get my head around like it as a product. There's only one I had a client come to me and ask for some online training. And I said like, I don't really do it. I don't really believe in it. I just want to do one-to-one stuff. This is like years ago. And he's like, well, I'm going to get it somewhere. So I'd rather get it from you, that somebody I can trust, than I don't know, someone else. And that sort of made me think, okay, well, I guess if they're going to get it somewhere, then I'll just do my best with it. But yeah, it's a tricky game. You know, I guess it's like any industry, but I don't know why this industry in particular seems that you need, you know, good physique, which is fantastic, I guess. And then that's kind of it. And now you've got like an online business and you're advising people what to do with their health. But you only get 2 knees and a spine and some hips. And, you know, I just say, just be careful who you listen to and who you trust. And as the trainer, be really careful what you tell them to do. And, you know, and I know I don't want to get into like clientele stuff, but if you're training someone of like VIP, which, you know, doesn't really mean much, but let's say it's like a VIP client, well, then you've got to be really cautious. Like I had a client the other day, we do some stuff and he got like a pain in his chest. And I thought, oh my God, I'm going to be in jail now, but this is crazy. But, you know, it doesn't really matter that it's them. But you think, well, anybody's body is like their most precious asset, and you better be fucking prepared and understand what you're doing. This is why like the RTS stuff was so like just blew my mind, and how I just think it needs to be mandatory for everybody to do. And I say that because I don't know any other course. You know, I don't know. Some people have kind of like copied it, but as the original, I don't know any course that opened my mind up to like, oh shit, I didn't understand what forces their body was really under. And now this has made me like go, you better pay attention. You better understand this, and your level of like anatomy and how like joint forces occur and what reactions occur from different forces. Like you better understand all of that if you're then going to go tell a stranger what to do. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and it's the I think it's the only job that you there isn't a requirement for this. It's like I threw up a post a while back saying that like I don't need, if I have to get a kidney removed, my surgeon probably doesn't need to know everything else in the body and how my foot works and all this kind of thing to take up my kidney if they've done it a million times and they've got the instruction manual. But I really, really prefer it if they did.
Yeah.
And you know, I think it's a Tom Purvis quote itself, where it's like, our job is to apply forces to anatomy. Yet most people don't know their anatomy and don't know the forces.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And this is why I think online coaching is an element of like, if you're going to do online coaching, either do your decade on the gym floor first to kind of have an idea of like how to scale it back and make adjustments, or using someone like Andy Morgan as a great example, you have such a strong criteria of like if you've been on Andy Morgan's website, it's like, you've got to have 8 hours perfect sleep. You've got to be able to cook all your meals. You've got to be a bloke between this age and this age. You've got to be able to have 2 years worth of training experience. And while that's like, you've got to have to be the perfect client before you walk in the door. But also, he's also realizing, well, this is online coaching. I can't control these things. So if you're going to be a candidate to work with me, you've got to be in a position to control those things. Otherwise, find a one-to-one coach. And I think maybe he goes to extreme, and he can. But I think there's an element of that. There's so many online coaches that are just grabbing money, don't really know what they're doing, and off you go.
That's interesting. But yeah, it's similar to, you know, when we talk to trainers, talking about trying to get the right clients for them. There's a point in your career where you need to reject clients that aren't right for you. So, you know, this started for me very early, where I wanted to do body comp stuff. And I had a woman come to me and ask if I would train her she wanted to run the London Marathon. This is like year 1 or 2 of my PT career. And you think, well, you're in no position to pick and choose who you train because you've got no money and you don't have a business. But because I knew that I didn't want to do that, I kind of like fast forward in my mind, well, okay, you train this lady and because, you know, you could probably learn how to do it or whatever. You train this lady how to run the marathon, and then she goes, oh yeah, I use this training, it's really great. And then you've now got a friend, and then like you fast forward 5 years and I've got like a marathon running website. It's not what I want to do at all. You have to have this you have to have this point where you understand what you want to do, but it's a very hard transition to, you know, as you just explained there, that's obviously maybe, you know, quite an extreme, but, you know your avatar, I guess. But you do have to have a point where you are picky of who you work with. And it's a lot better in the long run. Short term, you're maybe throwing away some money short term, but you're building a business long term, and it is hard, and there's a transition that needs to happen there, and it's something that it's really common, a very, very common conversation that I go through with trainers, which is trying to make that transition of like you've got clients there that are taking up time, that you don't really enjoy training, they're just kind of like once a weekers, not really doing much, and then you have to at some point transition between getting rid of those and so they can open up slots of people that are going to build your portfolio of results. And if that's what you want to do, for trainers that kind of want to be known for more results-based stuff. So yeah, I guess there's a line there, but at some point you have to. The trouble is with online coaches, no one's got any money. So you're training anybody and everyone. And then it's the exact opposite of what you just said, which is, as long as you're willing to pay me, here's the program.
And you're busy. Don't forget that.
And you're busy. As long as you're busy.
As long as you're busy and you don't have time to train.
Over 20-year-old busy professionals or whatever it is.
Yes. But I think people shoot themselves in the foot. I know we hammered that point, but I think people shoot themselves in the foot with the marketing, because we went back to this question of what you do that makes your results stand out. And one of the things you said was setting the expectation of what they needed to do. And then when your marketing is like, I'm basically going to get people that don't want to do all the things that I want them to do, and then I've got to try and tell them to do the things that they need to do. And I was like, you don't get that. You market your results, and you're going, I'm going to tell you how to get these amazing results. And go, well, I want a bit of that. And they know what's expected. Whereas if it's like anyone that's not, unemployed, who hasn't got time to train, who wants to eat all the foods they love, while we can get to that point for sure, there's an element of like, okay, let's get the ruthless basics in place, like consistently, and then they go, right, where's the room? That you just don't get if you're marketing to everybody.
Yeah, I think there was the other one that kills me is non-restrictive diets. So, well, you're restricting calories, aren't you? So what are you talking about? They say it like people are going to go, oh, so I just eat as much as I want of whatever I want, then sign me up. Like, of course that's going to sell. It's not the case, is it? It's on everyone. It's like, whilst eating the food you love. I don't know. Look, I'm terrible. I tell you what I'm shit at is business and online marketing. So, don't listen to me, but it does kill me a little bit. I guess it's the world, but yeah, it's a little bit that you just think, shut the fuck up. Like, just be a normal person for that. Yeah, I don't know.
So, like, I'm gonna double back onto that a little bit in terms of, because I think you're, again, it depends what you deem as success, but the fact that you've sold out a seminar, got a number of good results, worked with some high profile people, and now do super secret spy work proves that you've done something right, even if you're not the best marketer. But just before that, going into some of the stuff that we were speaking before about the responsibilities coaches have with their training and the ability of RTS, exercise mechanics is now a trend. You got into it before it was cool, right? We now see people strapping more bands to things than an acrobatic orgy. Now, I know that you have studied in depth this mechanics, not orgies.
Yep.
But in a busy gym, you can't make everything optimal. You can't superset, giant set, all these different things. What advice do you have if you've got a guy that goes, well, I'm learning all this stuff, I have no idea how to apply it? What is the protein and calories of training that you've learned from all this stuff that you've got to get people to be able to program in any environment that they're in?
Well, you can do it once you understand it, and you have to understand it to be able to then translate it, I guess. So going to like bands and chains and accommodating resistance stuff. Well, yeah, just do it manually. Like the manual resistance but you can only do that if you understand it. And then when you look at like a machine and you look at the cam and how it works, and you think, okay, this is what it is. I can make this better by applying forces here and here. Will it be perfect? No. Does it need to be perfect? No, not really. But I think there's nothing needed, but you've got your two hands, so just help them out when they need some help and kind of pull them through reps. And then in terms of programming stuff, again, you look at what matters. Okay, the weekly volume matters. Great. So rather than having and this is going back to like busy commercial gym, like at peak time stuff, rather than having this, okay, this is the program. And I'm somebody that is meticulous with stuff, and I want a program, and I want like it to be repetitive, I guess. But you have to understand what matters, and then what matters is maybe like the weekly equated volume. And yes, you can take the density of things into account that may affect other things, but actually now you've just got a checklist rather than a program. And this week you need to do this many sets on this exercises to these body parts. And you think of it more that way. And when I'm talking like super peak time where it's like crazy, you go, well, supersets don't work. So now I'm just going to do straight sets. And that's fantastic. I've got this thing. We're going to do this many sets. We're going to do this exercises. Then we're going to move on to the next one. Is there any difference between doing A1, A2 versus just straight sets? No, maybe you burn some more calories going upper lower, like GBC stuff, but like minuscule. And also like you could argue that if you're burning more calories, maybe your output will be slightly diminished, and then maybe you could burn the more calories by doing the straight sets because you can actually concentrate more. And then maybe you could also argue that if a client is a beginner, you don't need to confuse them and try and get them to juggle upper and then lower. Maybe you could go, listen, concentrate. We're working this muscle here. You're going to destroy it. Now you're going to rest. Then you're going to destroy it. Then you're going to rest. And then we're going to move on to something else where they can not think, okay, so I've got to do this split squat thing, and now I've got to like juggle these dumbbells things. It's just like, maybe that's easier for people. And, there's a timeline and of like skill that you'll work across. But it's exactly how I approach everything. It's like, what actually matters here? Okay, well, it seems like the total volume across a week or maybe across a month actually matters more than just the one session. So how can I make that work in what I've got available to me? And in terms of exercise mechanics, like I say, you've got to understand it to know what to manipulate. And it's not just about putting cuffs on your elbows and putting bands here, there, and everywhere. It's just understanding what's actually happening and then getting to a point that's going to give you the kind of biggest benefit but still give a client experience in the session that works in every sense of the word. So, that was, Michael Goulden, I talked to him about this. It was like I was doing it, and then I went back and, did some other stuff with him, and it was, I'm now working this gym, and I've sort of, these are my thought processes, what would you kind of do? And he says, even in our private gym, I think they give themselves 30 seconds to set something up. And if it takes longer than that, it's not worth doing, because there's something that, I'm really big on, which I've spoken about lots before, maybe in seminars and stuff, is the client experience, and the experience being like when they're in the session, like how does it flow and all that stuff. And if you're spending all your time clipping things on and they're kind of sort of stood around, it's gone all a bit cold and they've lost maybe the adrenaline or just the flow of the session, then their experience of it isn't as good, even if you're going to save, I don't know, whatever it is in like this perfect setup and you've gone a bit crazy. There's a line there. But also Tom, who's, Tom Purvis, the guy that come up with the RTS stuff, or come up with Discovered, I guess, or definitely, spoke on it, is way more into training than I initially thought. You go through RTS, your first exposure to it, and you think like, oh my God, like this is all, protractors and this stuff. And he's like, wants to train hard. And it's like, I guess you look at, and we haven't really got time to go into this in too much detail, but there's a time scale of how much people need mechanics, optimal mechanics in a rep, for example, and how much just any kind of stimulus is still going to benefit them. And there's a line there. And it's not like if somebody's never exercised before, and let's say you're doing a seated chest press, really easy example, and their seated chest press works a certain way, them doing it as the machine is, which is just, a rep, fine, you've got some control over it, versus you making it drop off a little bit more, the benefit to their muscle is zero. They're not, they're getting stimulus just by doing anything. Okay, keep it safe, I understand. But like you setting that up to be the most perfect, like from here to here, and it's going to drop off at this point due to your structure and your muscles, and it doesn't apply to these people. So there's also a timeline of when it's more important. And I think people miss that out too, like complete beginners. And it's like, but we need all this to look perfect. Yeah, maybe you're wasting your time and you actually just need these people to just train safely. And I understand that mechanics is a lot about training safely, but you could also just like, minimize the inertia of stuff and just keep control and maybe just keep them safe and make sure that they're in a sort of range and the tempo is, appropriate. But yeah, you certainly don't need to go too down that rabbit hole. But again, I guess that comes from I did at first, and then you sort of come back, and then you just have that constant look of like, what is really going on here? What really matters? And then applying it. So do you know what? Somebody wrote, I was speaking to this guy the other day, who's a physio out in Qatar, like genius, this guy. And he recommended, I needed some advice from him, and he sort of passed me on to somebody else. And in his message, he wrote to this other physio. I said, like Lucas is the guy, he looks after some people. He says something like, he's quite nice, even though he's English. But he's also, he just said, I think the line was like, and he's pretty sensible in his stuff. And I thought, that's like the biggest compliment you could give me. And that's really all I think is like, I'm just pretty sensible. And it's just, for me, that summed up. I thought, oh yeah, that's an amazing compliment. And that does kind of sum it up. Now, does that sell? Absolutely not. Like, yeah. I almost changed. I wanted to change anything on my website, my bio, to be like, yeah, pretty sensible. But that's generally the approach. Is like the exercise stuff. You just go, yeah, okay, that makes sense, doesn't it? Okay, that's pretty sensible. And it's the same with the food stuff. It's just like, yeah, that's pretty sensible, but not very sexy, I guess.
But that's the reason why I think a lot of people get confused, because we're in this Instagram world where it is all clickbaity, because we're in this massive call-out culture of everyone being, this thing's rubbish and this diet's crap and this person says a different thing. And in reality, there's a grain of truth in pretty much every message from almost every person. But then the people go, boom. It's like the example I use, and they're not necessarily calling out the guy, but Paul Saladino gets a lot of hate at the moment, Mr. Pro Carnivore, saying kale is bullshit and hating on seed oils. And I'm like, well, if we actually look at this in the potentially pro-inflammatory nature of seed oils, the quality of them and slightly rancid, yeah, are they the best bit of fat you could probably put in your mouth? No. But what he's done is he's taken that grain of truth and gone, it's bullshit, it's carcinogenic, it's going to kill you. I'm like, you're selling products now, rather than actually taking that bit of truth. But I think, like, going back onto that program and stuff, it's like, the more I've gone down this wormhole and I like it and I can nerd out on it, it's like, my program's almost become more simple the longer I'm in it. Like, the stuff that I apply is, right, well, where do I hold the load on this exercise to get a little bit more out of it? The split squat doesn't change. I might raise a front heel just to make it a little bit easier for them to just drive the knee forward without thinking about it. I might give them a load that's like in a goblet position for stability, or contralateral, I want to change something. But it's like, actually, the devil's in the detail. And I think the two phrases that I stuck to is, again, applying forces to anatomy. So if I, in a busy gym and I can't work stuff, I was like, well, what do I need? If I'm working for hypertrophy, I need to be able to take this guy pretty close to muscular failure, and I need to have some level of progressiveness to this. All right, I could do that in a million different machines. And I think, and then when it comes to sort of like the structure and limb length and all that sort of stuff, it's like, rather than thinking, what's the best way to sort of reverse ban this strategy? I was like, cool, they've got massive long femurs, they're, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, have I got a hack squat? Okay, I'll stick them on that. Rather than trying to think of the intricacies, what is the most easiest, simplest, obvious answer? And I'll go there first.
Yeah. It's I'm struggling, because I think about a couple of things that come to mind there. One is like, our job is to train muscles and then let the client go and do what they want with their new muscles. But our job isn't to do, I say that because I'm thinking of, like, I guess, S&C stuff where it's more juggly. And you think, yeah, maybe, but maybe if you just gave them all the individual tools to then go away and do whatever sport they wanted. And I look at really like sports versus exercise, or sports versus training, CrossFit being a sport, powerlifting being a sport, these like external goal driven or like number determined things versus like, well, you've got like this muscle here and we're just going to train this as hard as possible. And that seems to like, your body will orchestrate and put things together and you'll be able to do whatever you want with it. And it's really smart rather than like trying to think that you can override things. But that's quite a hard sell. And then I also look at clients of how things look can be tough, because I've had it a couple of times where like you're on the gym floor next to a trainer and, say like in the busy commercial gym setting, and I look at like my client and like their client. And I think if somebody was to walk past, same shit. Like we're just both doing exercise, but my client's got lots of reasoning behind things. And, I would never judge apart from I knew this trainer pretty well and I knew their sort of level and I was sort of seeing what's happening. And you think, and their client is doing things that I wouldn't do, but to my coaching eye, I can see that. But to somebody who walks past, it's sort of same shit. But and that can be really hard to sell. And in a environment or in a world where it's, you need the shiny, you need the clickbaity, you need the things that are like the jumping around, the choreographed, the two people doing the workout, the moves at the same time because it looks better on video and it's like a fucking Chris Brown dance video. But that's very hard to sell. But the one thing that you kind of rest in solace with is that the client feels amazing doing it. And you kind of have to like get a piece with, this might not look sexy. It's definitely not going to sound sexy. It's quite hard even for the majority of the time initially to sell that to a client. It's like, we're going to do things that your body's going to really thank us for, and you're not going to get any joint pain, hopefully, from like anything we're going to do. It's like, yeah, okay, I guess so. But until they're in it, that you get the benefit there. But it's quite a hard one. I struggle with trying to explain that to people that don't really understand the difference, but they will feel the difference. And once they do, then they're yours forever, because they're like, fucking, I've been training for a year. I've never felt exercise as, I've never felt as good as I do now with exercise. And when I first started doing RTS stuff, studying RTS, I had this huge switch where I used to think, in my own training only, I'm talking here, that pains and joint pains and ligament stuff was just part of the game. Like, you train and then your body hurts. Like, yeah, it's good, isn't it? And then it rebuilds. But since doing it and you sort of respecting ranges and joint angles and how you load stuff, you go, oh, right, this feels so much different. And actually, when you say like, you've got DOMs, it's like, is it in the belly of the muscle or is it the end? Is it the joints that hurt? And just recognizing the difference there. And that was one of the most eye-opening things for me, is like, it shouldn't be detrimental. And I think when people go to the gym, you think that exercise is automatically good for you. And I'm very loud on it. Absolutely is not. And there are lots of times you can exercise and make your health worse. And when people say you never, the only workout you regret is the one you didn't do, I think that's fucking hugely wrong, because you can do some exercise and put your back out and you'd probably regret doing that one. And it's not inherently good for you. It's like running. Is running good for you? Well, it depends, doesn't it? It's good for some people, maybe, if they've got the tolerances and the joints and their body can take it. And then for some people, it's going to destroy your knees and your ankles and your feet. And it's probably terrible for you. But you explain that to somebody that is only at the level that they think, well, it's running. Of course, exercise is good for you. It's nuanced.
And it might even be long term as well, right? Like a lot of the reasons now what I've maybe go down the exercise mechanics wormholes, and then the people that I used to work with and the influence that it had on me was like, well, a lot of my early workouts were like these crazy things I found in Muscle Fitness, where it's like 100 reps of leg extension to start into 4 sets of 20 back squats. Never trained a hamstring in my life. Never trained a glute in my life. Straight bar bicep curls, because of course you did, because that's what Arnie did. And then at the time, like, someone said to me, like, no, you shouldn't be doing that. And again, someone could do straight bar bicycles and have loads of supination, not an issue ever in the whole entire life. And one person 5 years later goes, oh man, why do my elbows hurt? But it's the things you're never going to convince that person's doing it. I don't hurt. And then 5 years down the line, I realize now that like the issues I certainly have around my instability around my pelvis and my hip has probably come from, like, I train quads, I never train hamstring, never train glutes, and I try and touch my toes and I get to my knees, and yes, some of that's structure, but some of that's bad, bad feedback. And there's almost the element as well, I find, like, going into, because I've learned in the last few years from Michael, but a lot of my initial exercise mechanics stuff was like second, third hand mechanics people. So you get a lot of the feedback was like, Simon, your proportions, not built to squat. You want to have good big quads. Don't do that. I'm like, okay. And I didn't do that at all for years. I'm like, well, if my only goal in life, like I didn't want money, I didn't want a child, I didn't want a career, I didn't want anything. All I wanted in my life was the biggest quads in the world. And that's amazing advice. But then I was like, well, now I move worse. You know, because no one actually taught me that step of like, okay, this is your goal for hypertrophy, and this is how we can find maybe your squat if you want to try and do these. And like you said earlier on about these outcome-based goals, your knowledge now could get them to what's going to help them right now with their body comp goal, and what is the safest, most efficient way to get them as close to what they want to from an output perspective as possible. And that's something I've only started piecing together in the last like 4 or 5 years from literally going down a too regimented, too accommodated resistance banded thing. I was like, I didn't need it. I need to learn how to move.
Yeah, it's goal based. It's fascinating. You know, I find all of it really fascinating. The conversation around why these are goals, but you know, everything is goal based. What is the goal right now? And then I look at, well, what's the most optimal way to get that goal right now? And in the future, what goal are you working towards? And then it's like, well, and also, why is that your goal? And that for me is a really, we've nowhere near enough time to go through that now, but that is like super interesting. And I guess that comes onto a part where, and it's, you know, there's so many different tangents you can go off that, but a part of coaching that is missed, and I think is maybe the most key, is, do you find people's goals and whys interesting? And if you don't, then you will not ever be a good trainer, because you need to have an interest in people and have to have a inquisitive, like, oh, and why is that? And that interests me. You know, do you know what I mean? Like, then that's interesting to me because I want to understand psychology and I want to understand why things are a certain way. And that's a huge part of training, I think, that people, it's like the huge piece that people miss when it's just like, well, it's just training and nutrition. It's like, yeah, of course. And there's a huge communication part. Great. And then there's this whole like fascination with people needs to be there, because if you don't have that, then I just feel like you're just so one dimensional. And that, I guess, would tie everything together, is you have to have a part of the, like, you know, if you just, from even what you just said then, immediately my brain is like, I wonder why Simon wants to squat. I wonder what that would mean to him. I wonder what that gives him. I wonder, you know, and then like just I want to unravel that so much. And I think it's a part that any good coach has. And it's yeah, I don't know why that just came to me, but that's like a fascinating part that I think is probably a big chunk that people, you know, we turn up to I've done a couple of seminars. I'm going to do another one, actually. I'm currently writing it. And people want to know how I come up with nutrition targets. Fine, it's pretty easy. They want to know how I come up with training plans. Again, very easy. And then that's kind of it. And I'm like, should we talk about like the people that we're training, remember, not the robots, and like how to communicate and how to like read people and maybe like judge feedback and look at moods and look at trends and that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's very much forgotten about, I think.
Please tell me that's what you're writing, because like I'll wire you across the money as soon as I click off this podcast. But I love that, and like I've now, and I know you have as well. You know, I've mentored trainers in different countries and worked with a lot of people, and I've seen people do really, really well and people who have struggled. And the people that do well are always those people who are people. If that makes sense. The people who naturally have the gift of the gab and could like people and can get away with people. I'll always throw a shout out to Adam Wright, who owns the Barn Boot Camp, and he was, you know, number one results producing trainer for 1 year where we used to work, and he self-professed it at the time. He wasn't the greatest trainer in the world, but he was just, his clients loved him, and he kept things simple, and he got incredible results. And I was like, well, put 10 years of experience on him and maybe go down some education. Like, how good does he become? And I don't know how well the barn's doing, but by the look of the social media, very, very well. And you see, and I see it time and time again. I met so many smart coaches that can't get a single person in shape, but I don't meet many great people who can't get somebody in shape.
Or at least
is it the best way? But they can get there.
Yeah, at least keep their clients. And I think you've all known clients, you've all known trainers that don't know everything, but people love them, so they stick around. And you know people that people don't love them, but they know everything, and you've got to have both. But again, like going back to with that, which his name was Adam
Wright, yeah,
Adam Wright. I think I interviewed him. I can't remember. He have like blonde, spiky hair.
It looks like he's from the In-Betweeners. That's the one.
Something like that. He moved to Australia, right?
He did briefly, yeah, but I think he's back somewhere now.
Well, I'm terrible.
Yeah, because that's a huge tangent for people that don't know him. Whatever, Great audio content.
Doesn't matter anyway. I'm just trying to place him in mind. Anyway, but somebody like that, again, you look at, well, they may not be the best technical trainer, but they're doing something right. And it's like trying to learn. So going back to that, what I was saying earlier, is like people in the commercial gym that train terribly, but they're in shape, rather than just going, well, they're doing everything wrong. And, I would never do anything like that. You go, well, they're doing something right here. So what is that one thing? And it's like, it's the consistency. And with him, by the sounds of it, it's like, well, people like him and he's a people person and he can maybe communicate well. And he's probably quite empathetic and, like people want to listen to him. So learn that skill, because you can know everything, every technical stage of it. What's funny is when I was doing some work out in the Middle East last year, and I was dealing with, there's a sports medicine hospital out there called Aspeter, which is amazing, by the way. And I was kind of thinking, why am I here? Because all these people are like geniuses. And you look at the difference between like sports medicine stuff was very like physiotherapy based. And you think, these are so much smarter than I am. But the personal training part of it is the personal and the communication. You think, right, so it's easy. Okay, easy is the wrong word, but it's maybe straightforward to go, well, this is the data and we've got these students that we're doing these lab tests on, and then this is the outcome. Great. So it's more like, 1 + 2 = 3, like whatever it is. But communicating the data and the sciences to people with lives and wants and needs and all this stuff is where personal training comes in. Because there was a moment where I was out there thinking like, what? I am out of my depth here. Like, what am I doing here? Because, as much as I feel like I've studied and know, these are people with like multiple PhDs just in like hamstring training. You think like, oh my God, I don't know anything. But
you've got a picture of Ronnie Coleman. That's what I remember from.
I do have a picture of Ronnie Coleman, and he asked me for it.
It's because you're such a good people person. He just wanted a picture of you.
He was like, hey, yeah. Do you know, Ronnie Coleman is a great example, I think, of why training the right way matters. And you look at him now and he's in a wheelchair and can't walk because he did the sport of bodybuilding. The sport is a sport. A lot of times in sport, like you sacrifice your body to win. And that may be rugby, running across the line with like a bad ankle, running a marathon. My hip, 4 miles out was gone, but I just kept going because I wanted to win. And bodybuilding, you can sacrifice your body, whether it's like abusing steroids, using, let's say using, whatever, same shit, taking steroids, and doing exercises that I would look at and think, oh my God, your joints, but it's going to induce more muscle growth, so who cares? But then you get to the point there where you look at running, you think, well, that's the other end of the spectrum, isn't it? That now he can't walk, and he's had 9 or something back surgeries, and so yeah. Back to the earlier point that training isn't inherently adding to your health. Sometimes it's taking away from it.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely 100%. Like I think going back to sort of like that personal element of personal training, that it's again, I think there's one sort of message that kind of comes out when I speak to you, is almost like that phrase of how you do one thing is how you do everything. We spoke early on about you doing the boring stuff as a parallel to your clients doing the consistent boring stuff in their career. And then you went in to talk about that coaches have to be interested in people and understand the why. And then you spoke about another coach and went, well, I wonder why he's getting results for his clients, or I wonder why he's in shape despite not doing things right, like in my head. Like, it's that curiosity comes out in your personal life and in your professional life, and it's the reason why you almost lead by example, regardless of the I don't want to say stakes. You're not in bad shape, but like, like comparing. You did a post recently about comparing your big traps, jacked arms shot compared to you holding your kid, and like it doesn't matter in your profile, because I think there's that air of I do what I say I'm going to do. Like, I live and breathe it, even if it's not necessarily showing my physique because of other priorities right now.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Doesn't matter what you do. I'm still a trainer at heart, and I'm going to be thinking about how shit of shape I'm in for the next 6 months. I don't care if I'm a good trainer. I can't believe it.
I just want big arms. Like you could tell the trainer. You could tell the trainer who looks at that photo, because I looked at it and went, look at the size of these traps. Yeah. And that's what who cares about your biceps? I want traps like that. Yeah. That's what I wanted.
It was a flattering picture.
So, like, just going into a couple of closing questions, one I always ask and one I'm intrigued at. We spoke about, like, what is important here, and you've gone down to, you've spoken RTS, you've spoken about sort of like the basics in terms of communication. If you had a new trainer right now and they had their first £1,000, they're going to spend on something. Business mentor, psychology, time with Michael, getting in shape themselves. What do they spend that money on?
Well, I think you have, going back to, if you're going to tell somebody that they have to do something, you need to understand it. So obviously everything, depending on what their job needs to be, you need to, I think understanding what you're asking somebody to do is the priority, and as I said earlier, should be mandatory for every trainer. So that at the very least, and then nutrition's tough. I think it's really poorly communicated and potentially understood with nutrition, and there's a real malpractice to it, I think. When you look at, just kind of flashing from my mind of some stories you hear, or like my old trainer told me this, and maybe, they told me this, and you're never sure whether that was like we spoke about earlier, like to get you A to B, and they knew the whole game, but it was just like getting you here. But they've kind of like had no aftercare. I think, put whatever answer you want, I think you fundamentally need to learn all of it to then advise people what to do with their health, because as much as, I'm always like I say, pretty self-deprecating, and me and my partner will laugh at, like, I can't believe my daughter's going to grow up and her dad's going to be a PT. It's so embarrassing. Like, that's me joking, but it's a big deal. Like, it's a really important role, and 100% you will change people's lives along the way, and some, to different extents. But with that, I can't believe I was about to quote Spider-Man, but with that, like, great power. Something like that. I've never even seen the film. Never seen one comic book film in my life. But you better understand what you're doing. So take your £1,000 and times it by 10 and educate yourself before you take people's money, would be my advice.
Yeah, I think it really is. It's so important to be, like, the responsibility we have is people don't even think about it. Like, it hit home. I don't know if you saw the thing I put on my stories the other day here with the 9 bags of pills that Ellie got when she got the flu from the doctors here. So local doctors in Hong Kong will give you 9 bags of pills. And on her first year here, she got walking pneumonia. And they gave her all these pills. And she's like, can I take these with my OCD medication? Like, yeah, no problem. Goes away, takes them, feels really anxious, really sick. Goes back, you sure I can take these? Yeah, no problem. She spends to get a more expensive doctor that's not covered by insurance, like a Western doctor. Like, well, that would put you in a coma. That would counteract your medication. And now, while I don't think many doctors in the NHS are going to be that extreme, we are, and I don't want to trash doctors. They do a great job. They're underfunded and they work really fucking hard.
Mm-hmm.
But like their primary role is to keep people alive, not necessarily help them thrive. And people go to the doctors probably once every 2 years when there is already a problem. Mm-hmm. We are the people in between that help people feel good, get healthy, not see the doctor, or help reinforce the doctor's advice to get them to doing the lifestyle things that they need to do. And I don't think there's necessarily enough credit for that. I don't think we're not here for credit, but it's like, in terms of the industry, I think we are more powerful and important than there's credit for what we do. And I think that is important. And I think there's another thing you mentioned there that was super interesting, of like when you get people come in from other PTs and what advice they were given. It's like, is it part of the game and they knew to get a result? Because I used to be like, what? That calories put you on 1,000 calories and you know, like what's going on? And I sit there and go, and I spend 10 seconds talking to that client. I go, he put you on 1,000 calories because you knew 1,000 calories is actually 2,800 for you.
Yep. Because
on paper it's 1,000. But we know what you're snacking, but you won't tell me, so I'm just going to adjust accordingly. But that's the art of it, as we've spoken about for the last hour and a half.
Well, that's funny. That also reminded me of another thing that I don't like, which is when people say, I was with a trainer, he put me on 1,000 calories, and everyone's like, in the comments, oh, fucking disgusting, blah, blah, blah. Well, you weighed 45 kilograms, so... probably about right, isn't it? Do you know what I mean?
And I'm in Hong Kong now, and literally I get that because what do you mean she's assaulting 1,100? I'm like, she's 25% body fat at 48 kilos. Like, where do you want me to go?
Yeah. So just give me the calories per pound before we start going mad about these like trainers that are dieting you down too low. Now, obviously they exist, but I do just, I just don't judge anything anymore. And also, if you ever want a red flag for a client, it's that they come in and slag off their last trainer, and you go, "All right, well, I'm next, am I?"
Yes. And like, it's also, while you're going back to the question we asked earlier on about coaches not getting results, I'm not saying you should grind people hard into the dust on low calories, low calories forever. But like, there's this, again, the overcorrection of like anything below 600 calories is going to trash your metabolism. No, it's not. If you're healthy going into it, you've looked after yourself, you've got a deadline, you've got a set time frame to hit it, and then you've got a good plan to come out of it. Sometimes you need to push a little bit hard if the goal is to have a physique that shows that hard work.
Yep.
And that is cool as long as you're both on board and you both have the aftercare in mind.
Well, that's it. It's being responsible and sensible and knowing the game. Like, everything's got a reason. We're going from here to here, and this is why. And then, obviously, it doesn't clear you of everything, but it at least puts you. Everything just needs to have a reason to it, and needs to be well thought out. And then with that, you cover yourself a lot of the time, I think.
There is one question I finish off with everybody that I think is always really interesting, because most people come onto podcasts and the aim is to say what you know and all the things you're good at and all the things you've learned. But tell me one thing you have changed your mind on.
When? Ever?
In your career?
Well, everything. I don't...
Good. I think it's a good answer.
Well, I don't... I'm not romantic to a certain way. I am not... I don't have like a bias towards a certain way, really. I'm just driven by the data, as is all my work is. Like, so we'll do it this way because I think it's the best way. Because if I didn't think it was the best way, I would do it the different way. Like, it makes so much sense. I just think that doing, you're not, it's a bit like, with clients coming in and you pre-deciding what they need and how their body works and stuff. It's like, you don't get to decide any of that. Their body will tell you, their body has the answers and they'll tell you what needs to happen. You just need to ask the right questions rather than have the demands. And that's the same with all of this game. Science it is a science, whether you like it or not. Like, there's some research that happens, and then you have to interpret that data and go, okay, well, this seems like this is now the case here, and it moves pretty slowly. And the more you study and learn, the more your mind should change on things. I don't think I know it all. Well, I definitely don't know it all, but I don't think anybody knows it all. I think that the way that I was writing some stuff, again to myself the other day, was, I think I wrote something like science led, but like human delivered. So you take the data, and that'll lead your way, but then you need to translate that into normal speak and interpret it into normal life stuff. And that's all I think. So I change my mind all the time, but not sporadically, like following shiny stuff, only as an evolution of what the latest data is.
And that's exactly why I asked that question to everyone on the show, because I think people are going to come onto this, probably we're in this world now, and a lot of what I sort of put forward, essentially my marketing thing, is help coaches beat imposter syndrome and sort of give them a system to work and give them that financial to have backing and the confidence. And most people that come onto this show may have looked at your Instagram and gone, I want results like him, or any guest, because I know there's your self-deprecating nature will won't want me to put all the plaudits on you, but like any guest that listens to a show are going to go, I like Pat Davison or Cassim, and I think he's got the system, he's got the answers. And yet all of those people change their mind, have doubts, question, lifelong learn. And I think the more we realize is like everybody that I get on the show, I realize, like, without not taking anything away from how smart they are, I was like, they're not too dissimilar from me. Mm-hmm. Like I say this with true value. I paid you for a consult last summer, mm-hmm. and I went away from it and going like, it wasn't like a light bulb moment went off in anything. You get great results, and I just went, do you know what? I'm doing all right.
Yeah. And
you reaffirmed a lot of the stuff that I was like, okay, I'm on the right path. The things I fixate on, I'm trying the right things. And like, that's the stuff that more coaches need to remember. It's like, look, things you're struggling with, we all do it too.
Joe, I think I deal with, say I get DM'd by quite a few trainers and stuff, off the back of doing seminar stuff for trainers. And I enjoy it. So one thing I've noticed is that most people just are looking for a reassurance, because if you're in a position where you're attending seminars or in a position to reaching out to like DMing another trainer that you don't know, and you're humble enough to like go, hey mate, like, can I pick your brain or something? Then I guarantee you're miles ahead of 99% of the industry anyway. And most people just need a bit of like a confidence boost. Now there'll be some technical stuff that, you could probably, you should think about doing it this way and maybe, study this stuff or whatever. But I actually see a lot of people that are just looking for the courage to continually do what they do and just know that they're heading down the right path. And they normally are. It's just like, you're going down the right path now. You just need to do it for a lot longer, a lot harder for the rest of your life.
Forever. Yeah, exactly. So for anyone who wants to reach out to you, to maybe reach out for a consult or to attend this next seminar, which I will 100% be going to now I'm back in the UK, and all these things now will be at my doorstep again, finally, or work with you as a client, how do people get in touch with Lucas?
Email info@lucassheehanpt.com, or you can DM me on Instagram. My Instagram is lucassheehanpt. I'm always happy to talk to people. Instagram can get a little bit busy sometimes, but I'll do my best. But email is always super easy.
And I think other when you're on super secret spy work, you've always been very, very quick at getting responses back. So I think, you deal with the business pretty well. But mate, this has been an absolute pleasure. This hour 42 minutes has flown by. So thank you very much for your time.
I rambled. Pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
No worries.